like to ask you
Mhm.
what, how are you feeling, and what would you like to focus on for today?
Mm.
Having having
So,
said having said that,
mhm.
we're going to use a process, an emotional toolkit to help you get to the root of all any negative emotion, feeling, and problem you want to work through.
Mm.
But I don't want you to feel restricted by this process. So at any time you want to say something outside of the process, feel
Mhm.
free to do so.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, so things that I'm feeling. Well, for the last few days, obviously the coronavirus pandemic has everyone pretty freaked out. What I've been mainly, I guess, concerned about is the job losses that are going to happen. I started a job February 3rd, a brand new job, February 3rd before all of this. So I had a month there before everything really started hitting the fan. So what my biggest fear from like last week or a week and a half ago was, oh man, what if this keeps going on and then the company has to decide to do job cuts? I'm the new guy. There is no way that I'm top priority. I'm new here. It's very easy to let me go. They were doing, fine without me before here. So that's what I've been concerned about, is not so much the health implications. I do understand the health implications, but more so the job losses is what's been making me nervous.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Uh, Very good example. Is there anything else you want to incorporate that you would also like to focus on for today? That way I get a bigger
Hmm.
picture.
Um, that's been the biggest one, just job loss, just being worried about that. My wife's immune system is a weaker immune system. When she gets sick pretty easily. So obviously she's been concerned about the virus and everything, because she's afraid that if she gets it, it'll affect her really badly to the point where, she would have to be hospitalized. So that's obviously taken a toll on us as well, on our household. So we've been thinking about that as well.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. So you worry for her well-being.
Hmm. Yes.
Got it. Got it. All right. So the process that we're going to use is called the emotional strength FIST process,
Mm-hmm.
right? F stands for feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to tell yourself feeling is healing.
Feeling is healing.
Yes. And so the thinking mind, the one that like you always let me ask you, do you find yourself thinking, overthinking, or in constantly doing?
Um, these days I've been constantly doing, just because I finally have the time to do a bunch of like the creative stuff that I've wanted to do.
Okay,
But
okay.
when I'm at a 9 to 5 job, I definitely do end up thinking a lot about just random things.
Got it, got it, got it. So thoughts and actions are important. They are the
Hmm.
ship that will help you get to your destination.
Hmm.
But your captain is feeling.
Hmm.
Okay. So feeling isn't the end all be all, but it is laying the bricks, laying the foundation for all other levels of healing and awareness to be possible. Okay. So
Hmm.
yes, we're going to analyze and use our mind to uncover what's the root of all, but it's important that you tell yourself feeling is healing. We don't like to
Feeling is.
feel because we associate feeling with feeling pain,
Hmm.
but I want you to reframe pain as an emotional wound.
Hmm.
So feeling is healing because it connects you to love. So even if you feel the emotional wound or feel the pain, it begins the healing process by giving it the medicine of love in order to heal.
Hmm.
But if we're constantly thinking, constantly doing, then we are avoiding the emotional wound. And when we avoid a wound, what happens? It grows.
It grows.
Okay.
It doesn't get treated. Hmm.
Got it. Got it. And like I said, it is that mantra that we want to use to center ourselves. Problems bring up feelings in us that existed before the problem ever happened.
Hmm.
Now, that means, what does that mean? That means the thinking mind tells us that it is a problem causing us a negative feeling, but in reality, the feeling pre pre-existed the problem. So even if we fix the problem, the core issue, the negative feeling will still exist. It will say something negative about you, but they are just weeds. It's not true about who you really are. You need to identify them, uncover them, so they don't control how you subconsciously control how you feel and think.
Mm.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now we get we do that. We want to identify these weeds, but that's when we do the I, which
Mm-hmm.
is identify in the FIST process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in order to identify your feelings, we're going to use the process, the PEWF process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We call it the poof process.
Mm-hmm.
Before we begin, I want to ask you, what emotions do you experience are the three main negative emotions? And there are subcategories to each one. So first one is anxiety, worry, or fear.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is anger or frustration.
Mm-hmm.
And the third one is depression, emotional suppression, or sadness, which is really just suppressing and numbing how you feel.
So one from each of those three categories.
Or which ones do you experience?
Um, what was it was anxiety. What else?
Anxiety, worry, or fear?
Um, Definitely worry more than anxiety. I just because I don't want to say that I have anxiety, because I know people who have like clinical anxiety and
Got
are
it. Got it.
diagnosed, and they take medication for it and stuff, and I'm definitely not there, but definitely worry. I get anxious as well. I'm human, so I get anxious about things. I wouldn't say I have anxiety per se, but I do get anxious about things. Worry. What were the other ones? Oh, frustration.
Anger
Frustration,
or
definitely.
frustration? Okay.
Yeah, more frustration than anger. Definitely just frustration with things that are out of my control. That's why that's what kills me, is like I
Okay.
know I can't do anything about them, but it frustrates me.
Got it. Do you experience any emotional suppression?
Um, hmm, that's a good question. You'd have to ask my wife.
Because
um,
because the when you say worry, that's like a mental way of experiencing anxiousness,
mm,
because it's like in right in the head, right? We worry
mm-hmm,
in our mind to avoid our feelings.
mm-hmm,
And frustration, anger doesn't have to be something that's violent, because
mm-hmm.
frustration is just repressed anger.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, that's really what it is. It's just frustration and anger about things that I can't control, and so I feel like, yeah, I suppress them.
Got it. Got it. So proof process, PEWF. P is problem, E is emotion. So tell me, what problem or situation brings up strong feelings of anxiety, worry, or fear in you?
What situations bring those feelings up? Definitely, being at a new job was making me worried and anxious, just because I would constantly think like, oh man, like, am I good enough for this? Like, why did they hire me? Like, there are other people they could have hired. Why me? And then, so being at a new job for sure brings up feelings of worry. Um,
Is there another? Because I like to see different layers or different connecting dots. Is there another problem or situation that brings up strong feelings of anxiousness, worry, or fear?
mm, Another situation that brings up feelings of worry, anxiety. Um, hmm. Just looking at my student loan debt number, just looking at it and being like, wow, this thing is never going to get paid down, and like I'm going to be paying this forever. They're going to garnish my social security and my pension, just because, yeah, for sure, financial stuff always
Got
just
it. Got
makes
it.
me a little anxious.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. All right. So, what problem or situation brings up strong feelings of anger or frustration?
Ooh, man. Politics gets me all worked up, because there's just so much stuff that, like, I wish I wish would go one way, but it doesn't. And when it doesn't go that way, I'm just like, damn, I can't believe that, like, people are voting for this guy, or people are feeling like this. So that definitely brings up a strong feeling of frustration. Um,
When
when me and
things
my
don't.
wife
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, no, no, I was gonna say, when me and my wife argue about things and we can't see eye to eye, that definitely brings up feelings of frustration for both of us.
When you argue, what about it is frustrating?
Um, well, what frustrates me, when it's going on too long, where we're just going in circles and we're not really solving anything. So it's just like we're both just repeating. We don't agree, and I'm saying my point of view, she's saying her point of view. We're not going anywhere, and it just keeps dragging on. That definitely frustrates me.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. All right. So we want to identify these weeds, these core negative feelings. They're going to say something negative about you, but they're not true about who you really are.
Mm-hmm.
But we want to, and I'll explain a little more later on, is we want to cut the head off the snake.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's not true, but we need to identify it so it doesn't, so it no longer controls how you feel and think subconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in order to identify these weeds, we want to do the W in the proof process, PWF, and that's worst fear, worst case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
You take the original problem,
Mm-hmm.
stretch it all the way to your worst fear, worst case scenario, and tell me
Mm-hmm.
what does that look like.
All right. So,
So for the
uh,
first thing, you said new job.
new job.
I
Yeah.
think they're kind of related. New job, student loan debt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stretch that to your worst fear, worst case scenario.
Worst case, I get fired. So my worst case when I started the job February 3rd was that I would get fired within the first week, and then I would have to go back to my old job, which I didn't like. So that was definitely a fear. And yeah, that would have been a worst case scenario. I just
How
got
about
hired
how
and
about
fired,
to have no job?
having no
Because
job. Yeah.
I'm not saying what is logical or practical, but speaking from the place of the anxiousness or the fear, it's always thinking about the worst fear in
Hmm.
order to prevent it from happening,
Yeah. So just
even
no
though it's not
job.
logical. Okay.
Having no job. Yeah.
No job and stuck with this ever growing student loan debt.
Yeah. That would never get paid off. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Um, let's say when you have an argument with your wife and it just keeps on dragging on, what's your worst fear, worst case scenario?
That we leave each other, that she just gets sick of it and she's just like, I'm done with this. That's definitely worst case,
So,
worst fear.
worst case scenario. So when it drags on too long, you're like, oh, what if this keeps on going and we don't work out and then she leaves? Is that
Exactly.
what you're
Yeah.
thinking?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you want to? I don't know if you want to explore this, but
Hmm.
'cause politics is a sensitive thing. But like, if you were to stretch that to your worst case scenario, what does that look like?
Worst case scenario for that is that we elect Joe Biden and then, everybody gets comfortable again and nothing changes. We forget about, all the progress we've made towards universal health care, towards legalization of marijuana, towards a Green New Deal. Yeah, worst case scenario is that no progress gets made and all these last 4 years of Bernie just out there really driving the movement just goes away.
Okay. Okay. Um. So now we want to do the F in the PEWF proof process. All right.
Mm-hmm.
F stands for feeling about the self.
Mm-hmm.
You want to imagine if your worst fear, worst case scenario were to come true, how would that make you feel about who you are? Now, there are three common feelings that come up. I call them FWP.
Mm-hmm.
F stands for failure or failing others.
Mm-hmm.
W stands for, and there's subcategories to this, worthlessness.
Worthless. Mm-hmm.
For example, like, I don't matter, I'm alone, people don't care about me, I'm
Mm-hmm.
neglected, I'm disrespected, I'm abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, the third one is P, which is powerlessness. This comes in two different forms and they're highly related. So
Mm-hmm.
the first one is powerless as a fixer,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that you feel immensely responsible for others. But in this scenario, with this mindset, you're using your personal key to drive the vehicle of life for another,
Mm-hmm.
and it's impossible. So in that situation, you're trying to be in control of something that is out of your control, which will make you feel powerless.
Mm-hmm.
Also, just simply needing to be in control at all times. I have a lot of clients who tell me that they need to be in control 100% of the time. And the moment they're not in control, they freak out.
Mm-hmm.
And one classic symptom of needing to be in control is constantly thinking, constantly doing. And remember, control is a coping mechanism. We want to control a certain situation to prevent a bad situation from happening.
Of
Because if
course.
that worst fear, worst case scenario were to happen, it bring up the head of the snake,
Mm-hmm.
that core negative feeling, and we don't
Mm-hmm.
want to feel it. So that whole mechanism is very interesting. PEWF is kind of like what people call the ego. I call it the thinking mind. Thinking mind says fixate on the problem, fixate on the emotion, anxiety, anger, depression. Oh, that's the one that's causing my pain. or fixate on the worst fear to prevent it, all of which is designed to help you avoid feeling that core negative feeling.
Mm, mm,
Okay. But if
mm.
you avoid it, what happens? Like, for example, if a bear were to run after you, would you run? It's obvious, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, definitely.
When you feel these feelings, the question you want to ask is, do you run?
Hmm.
Because if you run and avoid by constantly thinking, constantly doing, then you're saying these negative feelings are true.
Hmm.
You're saying that you are a failure, that you are worthless, that you are powerless by avoiding them. So that's why it's so important to identify this core negative feeling to begin to cut the head off the snake.
Mm,
Okay.
mm,
So let's imagine if your worst fear, worst case scenario were to come true, how would that make you feel? The F, W, P, and Y? Failure,
yeah.
worthless, and powerless. So they go to the first one, no job and in ever growing debt. How
Hmm.
would that make you feel? The F,
Yeah.
W, P, and Y? Failure,
Oh,
worthless, or
yeah.
powerless?
Definitely like a failure if I were to have no job and just get fired. Definitely failure, definitely worthless, definitely would make me feel like a sense of just like I'm not good enough. And then
Worthless.
powerless.
Because you want to because these are the FWP is a general guideline.
Hmm.
You want to answer why. So if it would make you feel worthless because
It would make me feel worthless because I would feel like I'm not good enough. Like I'm not like I just didn't deserve this role, this job.
got it, got it,
Failure because I failed to live up to, obviously they would have saw something in me in the interview process and I failed to live up to that. So that would
got it,
make me
got
feel
it,
failure.
got it,
And then powerless. mm, I wouldn't feel powerless. I think I would feel more the first two.
got it, got it, got it. So with politics, no progress is made. If
Hmm.
that were to come true, how would that
Hmm.
make you feel? The FWP and Y? Failure, worthless, or powerless?
Now, for this one, I would feel more powerless than failure and worthless. I would definitely feel powerless. Like nothing I say, nothing I do matters. They're just gonna, the whoever's in charge is the one making calling the shots, and there's no hope. There's no role or say or anything I can do about it.
Got it, got it, got it. All right. Um, with the argument with the wife, worst fear, worst case scenario is that she leaves. Or if there's something else, let me know.
Hmm. Hmm.
No, if she were to leave the relationship, the marriage, how would that make you feel? The FWP and Y?
Oh
Failure,
man,
worthless, and powerless.
yeah, that would make me feel like a failure of marriage. Like we couldn't bring it to work together. I would definitely feel like a failure because of that, because we couldn't work out our differences. It would make me feel powerless for sure because I couldn't do anything to stop things from escalating and from getting to the breaking point.
Oh, because you feel responsible for the well-being of the relationship.
Yeah, and then I don't know if I would feel worthless, more powerless and failure.
You wouldn't feel alone.
Yeah, I would feel alone. I would definitely feel alone. That's
Okay.
that's part of worthless.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Okay. All right. Since we identified your core negative feelings,
Hmm.
now we can move on to the S part of the FIST process.
Hmm.
And S stands for separation.
Hmm.
Okay. Separate from what doesn't belong to you.
Hmm.
Right. Before we clarify what this means, I want to ask you a question. If
Hmm.
somebody around you is feeling anxious, angry, sad, or depressed, are you able to feel it, pick up on it, or sense it?
Yeah, I think so.
Got it. Got it. Can you give me an example?
When my wife's quiet and she's not acting like her cheerful self, I definitely pick up on it real quick.
Got it. Got it. Got it. So that speaks about the ability and the gift of sensitivity.
Hmm.
Everybody is born with some level of sensitivity, but the way you answer that question puts you in the category of the 1 out of 5 who are highly sensitive and have high empathy.
Mm.
Okay. So another way to understand separation is by asking yourself this question. And before you do so, I want you to pull up those negative emotions, those worst fears and core negative feelings like, oh, no money, and I'd be a failure. If
Mhm.
she were to
Mhm.
leave, I'd feel alone. I feel
Mhm.
powerless if nothing changes, or
Mhm.
feel powerless and just like trying to help the well-being of your marriage, or her feelings itself. Okay,
Mhm.
so pull up all of that and
Mhm.
ask yourself, who else in my life feels this way? Or another question you can ask is, whose movie am I in?
Mm.
What
Mm.
does that mean? Because this gift of high sensitivity is an incredible gift. But
Mhm.
if we don't use it consciously and correctly, then it's a double edged sword,
Mm.
because it can cause us pain or harm, emotional pain or emotional harm.
Mhm.
Now, if you misuse your gift of high sensitivity and high empathy, you can subconsciously zap yourself into somebody else's movie thinking it's your own. And in that scenario, it's incredibly painful, confusing, and even traumatic, because no matter what you do, nothing ever changes because it's not your movie.
Mm. Mm.
Okay.
Mhm.
So there are many, many people in which you can find yourself in the movie of, but
Mhm.
we'll begin with the first people you ever knew,
Mhm.
okay? And which is your parents.
Parents. Mhm.
Okay. So the connections that we'll make, they're not necessarily clear in the beginning, but they're clear when we complete the process.
Mhm.
So we're going to apply the same PEWF proof process to each one of your parents. And we're going to begin with the parent that is more emotionally expressive.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I grew up with just my mother. I didn't grow up with my father, so I don't know too much about him. I grew up in a household where it was my mom, my aunt, my grandma, my uncle. So I definitely had family members that I grew up with, but my father was not present at the time. So we could start with my mom.
Okay. And so what emotions does she experience out of anxiety, anger, or depression?
She for sure displays anxiety, and I don't know if she feels depression. She's pretty good at hiding it if she does. But what was the other one, the one in the middle?
Anger or frustration?
Oh, anger and frustration, both.
Okay, okay, okay. So, what problem or situation brings up strong feelings of anxiety, worry, or fear?
For her, definitely financial burdens growing up. We had a lot of financial problems and everything, and I would remember seeing her crying when we couldn't pay bills or anything. So that was definitely something that brought up that feeling of anxiety for her.
Got it, got it. What problem or situation brings up strong feelings of anger or frustration in her?
She gets mad so fast. So a lot of things, when people aren't doing what she wants, when people are when yeah, just when she loses a feeling of control. She's definitely, I think, somebody who likes to have things in her control.
So, when people are not listening to her or not following her direction.
Yes.
Got it, got it, got it. All right. So, with the finances, what is her worst fear, worst case scenario?
Since she was the one really providing for the entire family, I think her worst fear would be that we would have gotten evicted, and that everything would have been on her because she wouldn't be able to provide for us anymore.
So, fail to provide for the family,
Hmm.
be homeless, and to
Yeah.
really fail to provide.
Hmm.
Okay. Just taking notes.
Hmm.
All right. If that, or if her worst fear were to happen, how would that make her feel the FWP and Y? Failure, worthless, or powerless?
I think all three. Yeah, she would feel like a failure because she failed to provide for the family. She failed to maintain, safety for everyone. She would feel worthless because she wasn't able to do it. She wasn't able to provide and to be
Because
the
that's how
one.
she identifies herself as.
Yeah, she wouldn't be able to be the glue that holds the family together. And then powerless because she wouldn't be able to control the situation anymore. She would feel
Because she
like
feels responsible for the well being of
responsible.
everybody.
Exactly.
Got it, got it. All right. So the anger when people don't listen to her or don't follow her direction, What's her worst fear, worst case scenario?
That people, yeah, that people just won't listen to her anymore, and that the things won't get done the way that she wants them.
Or people look down upon her?
Um, maybe, yeah, maybe that people are
Like
ignoring
not only
her.
listen to her, but don't want to even associate themselves with her.
Yeah, possibly.
Okay. So if her worst fear were to happen, worst fear, worst case scenario, how would that make her feel? The FWP and Y, failure, worthless, or powerless?
Oh yeah, she would definitely feel like a failure because nobody's listening to her. What she has to say isn't important. Worthless because yeah, what nobody's listening, so what her opinion isn't like valued. And powerless because nobody's listening, so she has no power, no control,
Got
no.
it. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it. All right. Have you met your
My father,
father?
a long time ago, long time ago. I think last time was, man, it's got to be like 14 years at this point, like 13 years.
Okay. Okay. If it's like necessary,
Hmm.
we'll we'll visit it. Okay.
Yeah,
Later
just
on. Later on.
I don't know too much about him, so
Okay.
I
Okay. Got
really
it. Got it.
honestly wouldn't be
So
able
so
to know
so
any
we'll
of those
focus on this
things.
for now. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think we're ready, and we went through this pretty fast because there's only one parent. Like,
Yeah. No worries, no worries.
okay. So I want you to find some type of object that you can place onto your lap that has significant weight, preferably not a phone.
Significant weight, you said, like a
Yeah, not
DSLR camera.
you can do that. Yeah.
Camera's good. All right, cool. I got a camera right next to me.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So remember I talked about the gift of high sensitivity and high empathy. Another a
Mm-hmm.
way I describe that is I call them emotional antennas. Okay. So I want this seems a little bit silly,
Mm-hmm.
but I want you to take your two index fingers and put them right on the sides of your head as if
Uh-huh.
like you had antennas on your head. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Put them down. All right. So even if you place them down, they're always there. You were born with them. They allow you to feel what other people feel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now we're going to do the emotional antennas exercise. I want you to close your eyes for a moment. Okay. I want you to connect with your body because your true emotional antenna is your body.
Mm-hmm.
This is how you feel what other people feel. This is where you internalize them. This is where you store them. Now I want you to connect with all those negative emotions, worst fears, worst case scenarios, and the core negative feelings in your body and transfer it all to this object and weight on your lap. Transfer every last drop of it. Fear of no money. And if you have no money, you're failing the family. Okay? You're a failure. You don't have self worth. Or in like political situations, you feel powerless. Transfer all of this. Or the feeling of being alone. Transfer all of this into this object and weight on your lap, every last drop of it. Now, when you do that, I want you to reframe what these negative emotions, feelings, and worst fears are. Reframe them as the emotional signals you picked up through your emotional antennas from your mother since you were a child. Allow that awareness to settle and to sink in your body and really feel all of that in that weight, in that object. Before it was subconscious, unconscious, but now you are conscious of this weight and the heaviness of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You, so keep your eyes closed. So when you say like, oh, in the political situation, if Biden is elected and no change
Mm-hmm.
ever takes place, you feel powerless. Not saying what you want isn't true,
Mm-hmm.
but that powerless feeling is that's when you're in your mother's movie, when things don't go her way.
Mm.
When people don't listen to her, don't follow her direction, she feels powerless. She gets angry because anger is just a protection of pain. It's a way, it's rooted in a feeling of powerlessness because, like, well, I feel powerless, but I show this kind of like surface or image of strength.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if people don't listen to her, it makes her feel like she's like, well, she's worthless. And so when you're like, oh, you get an argument and it lasts long with your wife, well, what if she leaves you? Well, she leaves you, she'll feel alone. And in that moment, you're in your mother's movie. That's
Mm.
your mother's feelings. And the
Mm-hmm.
money issue, your mother grew up with the pressure and the burden and the responsibility to take care of her whole family all on her own. And she was so worried that she wasn't going to be able to do so. She put her responsibility as her identity. Because if she were to fail at this, she would be worthless. She doesn't know another identity. And so when you think about like money, like, oh, what if I lose a job? Then and you're married and I don't know if you have children or about to have children, you're just like, oh no, I'm gonna fail my family. And that is your mother's feelings in that moment, in that time when you're growing up with her. Okay. So you can open your eyes.
Wow, man. That was a lot of feeling. That was a lot of feeling, and just I was just listening to you speak, and everything was just coming up, and all the things that you were saying, and just about my mom and how she grew up with financial problems, and now I'm living through that, and even the way that she didn't get married until very recently, until 2016, like. So even with her relationships, I've witnessed a lot of her relationships go bad, and a lot of arguing and stuff like that, and just to think about it now and how it all connects.
The relation would go bad because of why?
They would argue. My mom is just a hot-headed person.
Okay. So I want to do an exercise with you too, because
Mhm,
how do you separate from all this stuff that feels so much a part of your being? You
mhm.
know, something that it's. But so there's an exercise that we can do. But before we proceed, any questions, thoughts, or feelings thus far?
No, this is great.
Okay. Okay. So the exercise we're gonna do, I call it like this: how do you separate from all this stuff that which seemingly like is something have been a part of you, feeling seemingly,
Mhm,
yeah, for all of your life, and how do you
mhm,
separate from all this?
mhm.
So we're gonna do something called SAM. Are you okay with a little playful cussing?
Yeah, yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So SAM stands for shit ain't mine.
Shit ain't mine.
Okay. So what does
Okay.
that mean? That weight, that object on your lap, which is the emotional signals that you internalize in your body, now you rightfully put it into this object separate from your body.
Mhm,
That doesn't belong to you.
mhm,
Those are your mother's feelings
mhm,
that you used your emotional antennas as a child, subconsciously and unknowingly felt it as if it was your movie, as if it was your experience.
mm,
Okay.
mm, mhm,
So when you say SAM, shit ain't mine, you're not saying this to your mother. You're
mhm,
saying this to yourself.
mm,
Because if you misuse your gift of high sensitivity and internalize your mother's feelings into your space because you're so in tune with her, you love her, but then when those feelings are in your space, when that object is in your lap as it is right now, it becomes your emotional kryptonite.
mm,
It'll break you down physically, emotionally, and mentally. It'll make your life the living nightmare that it feels right now when you're like, oh no, student debt. Oh no, like they just hired me. They're going to fire me. I'm new here. So that is
mhm.
like, that's the nightmare of living in somebody else's movie because you can't fix it. It is a
Yeah.
hologram.
Mhm.
You try to put your hands through the hologram, and every time you do so, nothing changes. And that
Nothing.
is very, very painful and confusing.
Mm, mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a mantra I want you to say out loud. Okay.
Okay.
There's
Uh-huh.
two parts to it. So I want you to say out loud, I'm not an emotional sponge,
I'm not an emotional sponge,
but a source of light.
but a source of light.
Okay. So what does that mean? That means
Mhm.
if you use your gift and you are that emotional sponge, it's your emotional kryptonite, breaks you
Mm-hmm.
down physically, emotionally, and mentally. You want to separate from what doesn't belong to you, put it back in the space that it came from. Then you can shine your light. Then
Mm.
you can actually begin to be able to help others in the
Mm.
most powerful way.
Yes,
Okay.
I like that a lot.
Okay. So we're going to do the SAM exercise. So I
Mm-hmm.
want you to imagine a personal, like a healthy line of separation,
Mm-hmm.
separating your personal space and the personal space of your mother.
Okay.
And when you put that object across the healthy line of separation, I want you to verbally say out loud, shit ain't mine.
Mm-hmm.
And then feel your body separating from all these negative emotions, worst fears, and core negative feelings.
Mm.
Okay?
Mm.
Whenever you're
Okay.
ready, you can do so.
So just say it like financial problems. That shit ain't mine.
Whatever that financial
Yeah.
problem is, oh no, I'll be alone if my wife
Oh.
leaves me, which is like
Mm.
this feeling
Mm.
of worthlessness and the powerlessness. Like, oh
Mm-hmm.
no, you feel so responsible for your
Mm-hmm.
wife, for your family, and you just fixate like, what if they're gonna fire me?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
the political situation, I feel powerless. Like that's your mother's
Mm-hmm.
constant feeling. That's why she's the hothead,
Mm-hmm.
because she
Mm-hmm.
feels powerless.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So feeling powerless. That shit ain't mine. Joe Biden gets elected and no progress gets made. That shit ain't mine. Getting fired.
The feeling is not yours.
Feeling.
If that
Yeah. Yeah.
happens, like you may not like it, that's you're rightfully so, but
But the
it's the
feelings
feeling that it
come.
brings up.
Yeah, the feeling of feeling worried if I get fired. The shit ain't mine. Feeling of being frustrated when arguments aren't going my way. That shit ain't mine either.
Because you would feel alone, right?
Because I would feel alone. That shit ain't mine.
Got it. That's good. I like it the way you did it. So I want you to take that object, put it across the healthy line of separation, and verbally say out loud, shit ain't mine, and then feel your body separating from these
Right.
negative emotions and feelings.
Mm. Put this on.
You gotta say it out loud.
I'm putting it all across the line of separation.
No, you just
I'm
say shit ain't mine. That's all you gotta
oh,
say.
that shit ain't mine. Shit ain't mine.
Yeah,
Feels
yeah.
good, man.
Good. All right. This is the first half of separation. There's a second half, which is about the intergenerational healing that
Mhm.
goes to the core of the core, the root of the root. But um, is there any questions, thoughts, or feelings you have thus far?
No, nothing.
Okay,
This is great.
good. So I want you to really, because your gift of high sensitivity is not a destination. It's a muscle that you need to flex. You need to keep
Mm,
on practicing it. So that's
mhm,
the emotional strength FIST process. F
mm.
stands for feeling. Feeling is healing. Remember, when we're always thinking, always doing, you got to take some time just to feel that knot that you feel. Where do you feel it? In your throat, heart,
Chest. Yeah.
stomach, so your chest. Okay. So that's the one, like, I don't want to feel it. So we're just constantly thinking, constantly doing. I want you to actually feel it
Mm,
and just say, feeling is healing. You don't even need to figure it out just yet. Okay. You're
Just
giving
say.
it the medicine of love in order to heal. So, and you're
Mm,
creating a foundation for all the levels of healing and awareness. So
mm.
you establish that foundation. Feeling is healing.
Feeling is
I
healing.
is identify.
Mm,
Identify through the proof process. So this is important. PEWF.
mhm.
So like you feel that knot, feeling is healing. Then you go, okay, what emotion are you experiencing? Anxiety. What problem is bringing up that emotion? What's my W is the worst fear, worst case scenario. Then if your worst fear came true, how would that make you feel about who you are? The FWP, failure, worthless, powerless, and why. After you identify your core negative feelings, then you go to the S, which is separation, and that is whose movie am I in? Oh no, I'm in my mother's movie. And then I want you to visualize a miniature movie screen in front of your eyes. And when you catch yourself, like, oh no, you worry about money, you're like, then you visualize your mother in that miniature movie screen. You want to use your gift consciously and correctly. It doesn't mean you kick your mother out. You just see the movie, but you don't put yourself in the movie
Mhm.
thinking it's yours. And that's when all the problems, pain, and trauma begins. Because like the word trauma, people think it's sexual, verbal, or physical abuse.
Mhm.
This, I call it intergenerational trauma because we don't even know that it's happening, because
Yeah.
that kind of trauma, like verbal, sexual, physical abuse, we eventually know that it's wrong. But this trauma, We don't even know it's happening. And no matter what we do to try to fix it, our hands go right through the hologram. Okay.
Mhm.
So when you catch yourself in that movie, you see that movie, see that, then visualize a stop sign in front of you. Instead of the word stop, it says SAM, shit ain't mine. And that's what I want you to focus on for right now. That's the first half of the process.
Beautiful, beautiful, man. That's amazing. And I love it. Shit ain't mine. I'm gonna be saying that all the time. And feeling is healing. That one
Yeah,
is
yeah.
good too. And I am not an emotional sponge. I am a beacon of light. That is beautifully said, man.
Perfect.